hiring workers, so that will augur well for the economic recovery when it comes. But at this stage, no one's willing to bet their futures on just when that economic burst of sunshine will happen.
I take that point, but at the same time, if we're talking glimmers of hope, consumer spending was also up. It does seem consumers are holding their nerve.
Consumer spending, Ali, in this quarter between January and March was up 2.2%. Now, whether that's consumers buying things to cope with the downturn like alcohol or medications, we are not really sure about the actual details of the figures, but it does show that the ever-resilient US consumer hasn't completely backed away from going out and shopping and spending money. And that's very important because US consumer spending accounts for a massive 70% of US economic activity, and economic policymakers are hoping that that figure holds up in successive quarters.
Now, I know these numbers have only just come out, but of course they come on the same day as President Obama celebrates or commemorates, I guess, 100 days in office. Has there been any official reaction?
No official reaction yet, although these figures will come as something of a blow for the government. Of course, Barack Obama and the Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner have been talking a lot lately about seeing glimmers of hope, about seeing green shoots in the US economy. These figures show that as of at least the end of March, the US economy was still in very, very deep trouble. The US government's also making the point, though, that the US economy is yet to feel the full effects of that massive $787 billion economic stimulus package that the US Congress passed a couple of months ago. The government says the tax refunds and the infrastructure spending involved there won't start to flow through to the US economy until this current quarter and certainly towards the end of this year. So they're hoping that we've seen the worst in terms of those big quarterly falls for economic activity.
Now, we've also got, in the morning your time, inflation numbers that have come out, and they're at the lower end of expectations?
Yes, the Fed's Personal Consumer and Expenditure Index shows that inflation, that the Fed's preferred measure of inflation, rose by 1.5% over the 3 months to the end of March. That's at the lower end of the Fed's expectations and shows that inflation really isn't a problem, which will feed into today's meeting of the US Federal Reserve. Again, they're deciding just what action to take to try to revive US activity through monetary measures. Of course, they can't do much with conventional measures, given that the federal funds rate is already near zero. But expect to see in about 5 hours, when the Fed releases its statement, confirmation that they're going to take further efforts in unconventional ways, like buying bonds, pumping more liquidity into the system, effectively printing money to ease those credit markets and boost economic activity. And Ali, for the first time in successive meetings, there's a great deal of interest in what the wording of the Fed statement is going to involve. It's going to be very interesting to see whether Ben Bernanke and his colleagues at the Fed share that muted optimism at the White House about possible recoveries in various parts of the US economy.
We'll have to read the tea leaves. Michael Rowland, many thanks for talking to us.
Pleasure.